our speaker for today. Our speaker for today is someone who is a governance, communications, and advocacy specialist with demonstrated success in leading and building sustainable programs and strategic leadership in governance, tourism, humanitarian, and development sectors. She is an ardent advocate for the constitutional promises of public participation, integrity, equality, devolution, access to justice, and accountability. In fact, if I want to say more about her, we'll not finish today, so I'll leave it here. She's in the person of Madame Caroline Gaita. She is the Executive Director of Mzalendo Trust, which is based in Kenya. Madame Caroline, please, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Claire. Fortunately, I can't start my video. I think you've disabled my rights to do that.
Okay, please, you've been given the access.
Okay. No.
Okay, all right. Give me a minute, please.
Okay, but I'm really honored to be here and to finally be able to do this. I was looking forward to the session when it was earlier scheduled for January. So I'm excited that we get to talk about our work as a parliamentary monitoring organization and to share experiences on how we have used and leveraged on tech to advance the area of civic engagement in parliamentary processes. Thank you for the introduction, and thanks for keeping it short. I think we need to edit it. So as she said, so my name is Caroline Gaita. I head Mzalendo Trust, which is Kenya's premier parliamentary monitoring organization. It's also one of the premier parliamentary monitoring organizations in the country. And we've been doing this for almost 15 years now. And I'll speak a little bit more as we move along with the presentation. So I'm not sure whether I'm supposed to go straight into the presentation.
Yes, please, you can go straight to the presentation.
Okay, so allow me to share. Okay. You can see my screen?
Please, you can see your screen, please.
Okay. All right, so I was asked to speak on how parliamentary monitoring organizations can leverage on tech to enhance parliamentary openness and accountability. And this, for me, is sharing the work that we have done for the last 15 years, some lessons that we have learned along the way, some challenges that we have encountered, and what opportunities exist now, especially as parliaments emerge from the COVID-19 era and also try to adapt to a new way of working, hybrid models of working. So just as an introduction and just so that we are on the same page, as is indicated, Kenya is one of, Mzalendo Trust is one of the leading parliamentary monitoring organizations in the continent. We started this, I think we are amongst the oldest, with some of the others, being from Ghana and South Africa. So we started this 16 years ago. And as you're aware, parliaments do play a very key role in democratic governance. We have entrusted them to oversight the executive, to represent the citizens and their interest, and to also make legislation for us in addition to, in addition to their representation role. And therefore, this work that they perform, there is need for citizens to then be able to also provide some checks and balances, demand accountability. And therefore, PEMOs emerge as the watchers of the watchdog, because we always say the parliament is a watchdog, but who is watching the watchdog? So PEMOs assess the functioning of parliaments, or the individual members. They seek to facilitate and promote public knowledge of and participation in parliamentary processes. And they do this through different ways, including but not limited to citizen engagement in the legislative process, and also providing access to information about parliaments and their work. So as I've just alluded to, a lot of monitoring organizations across the globe take different approaches to their work. There are those that monitor the performance of MPs and political parties. Others focus on committees and the institution of parliament. So for us, for example, as Mzalendo Trust, we've taken the former, monitoring the performance of MPs, the committees, but also the institution of parliament, and also providing direct linkage with parliament through live coverage of parliamentary proceedings. Also, the approaches vary, and some are adversarial, others are more collaborative. For us, we take a middle ground. In some cases, we have found ourselves leaning more on the adversarial side, especially when we are doing the annual scorecards. But a lot of times, it needs to be a collaborative approach. It needs to be less conflict and more engagement, because a lot of the work that PEMOs do then is pegged on being able to access Parliament itself and also being able to access parliamentary information. Some of this work may take the approach, again, looking at the approaches that different institutions have made. Some have websites that describe MPs' performance or level of activity. Others have advanced websites that provide visitors with MPs' background information, voting record, and plenary floor speeches at the click of a button. Again, for Mzalendo Trust, we fall within this section, and I'll speak a little bit more on how we do it. But as a background, Mzalendo Trust actually started as a website that was set up, was established to fill a gap or to fill a niche when the founders identified that accessing information on members of parliament was very difficult. And they created this repository where, as a citizen or as a journalist, if you wanted to have information about your member of parliament, those were the days when the internet penetration was very low. Then you'd go to the website and you'd have some basic information on the name of your MP, the constituency they represent, and where possible, the party and the committee. Over time, we have improved this, and if you visit our website, you'll find that the information now is more elaborate to include the background information, to include the voting records, and to also include the Hansard that shows, yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, but the problem is that we would like you to zoom into your presentation. It's kind of small from here, the in-house participants. So if you can zoom it so that we can all have a look at
it. Let me see. Is that better? Oh, sorry.
Yeah, this is better. Thank you.
Okay, it's the screen. It's this specific screen, but if I make it too big, I also can't see.
Oh,
okay,
yeah.
That's much better.
Okay, this is much better.
Okay, yes. So I was talking about the profiles and the voting records and the plenary floor speeches, and this is done across different PEMOs, and especially the advanced ones. Like in Germany and most of Europe, you'll find a lot of this information being made available for their members. There are also other PEMOs that work as research organizations, and they study issues facing parliament and provide analysis and policy recommendations, whether it's on parliamentary reform, transparency, and other policy areas, with a view of stimulating debate inside and outside of parliament. So these ones have then positioned themselves as parliamentary think tanks. The others that are watchdogs, evaluating MPs and parliaments based on international standards for parliamentary development, or developing their own indices. And I know most of us here, including PN Africa and others, probably fall in this category. So for us as an institution, we have adopted a hybrid model. As I said, more collaborative than conflictual, but conflictual where the need arises. Monitoring the performance of MPs, but also providing a lot of research and policy analysis, and therefore really fitting in onto the profiles of, or touching the different facets of what PEMOs can do. How do we do this, and how do PMOs do this? And this is now leading into the civic tech. So technology has been an enabler in a lot of ways in terms of accessing parliamentary information. So you find that for different PMOs, depending on what information they want to make available, they have used technology. So for example, there's an adoption of an automated Hansard where you can, at the click of a button, you can find information on your members' contributions. If you're a researcher and you're interested in a specific topic, whether it's finance, agriculture, at the click of a button, you can be able to do that. Others provide live coverage of parliamentary proceedings. And how does this use of social media and media enhance legislative transparency? Because as a citizen, then you have a live feed to parliamentary proceedings, and therefore you can hold your leader accountable as to what they are saying in the House. This is, of course, a shift, especially for a country as ours, where before you hardly had this sort of coverage. And a lot of cases, things would be attributed to members, but because there was no evidence or we had no access of these proceedings, one could then deny. But with this sort of live coverage, it then makes for a lot of accountable and real-time participation of the citizens. Other ways this is done is facilitating citizen participation in legislative affairs through use of technology tools. In Kenya, we have a platform called Dokeza. Again, I'll speak a little bit about it. And this is at the touch of a button or at the click of a button, you can then go to a website, be able to see what business is in the House, and be able to, it provides for bill annotation. The others who disseminate information on specific issues, and that includes ourselves, including our daily parliamentary agenda, something that we call the Bunge Spotlight, Bunge being Kiswahili for Parliament, that allows you to know every day what's happening. And then there's, from Zalendo, we have also another platform that is an SMS-based platform that allows citizens that don't have internet access or access to smartphones, or in areas that have low penetration, to then also be able to follow this conversation on the basis of an SMS platform. So basically, it's touching on civic tech. You then see that there's a lot of adoption of e-democracy and e-participation tools that is increasing, and especially during the pandemic, and hopefully will pick up post-pandemic. So how do we then do this? Now coming back, zeroing down to our experience as Mzalendo Trust, just touching on it briefly about Mzalendo Trust. You always told not to speak before you have given the mandate, to explain where you drew your mandate from. And so I'll just briefly speak about Mzalendo Trust and see how that builds up to our work on civic tech. So as indicated, we are a parliamentary monitoring organization, premier in the continent, been around since 2005. So actually we are turning 17 this year. When the new constitution of 2010 was promulgated, as you're aware, that the Kenyan constitution has very strong tenets on public participation and directly requires parliament to be open, to facilitate public participation, and to provide information and access to parliamentary information. The institution was then relaunched to respond to this new constitutional dispensation, and our inspiration was from the UK platform developed by My Society, and that you can check. It's called They Work For You under mysociety.com. And the premise of this really, and the premise of many of the parliamentary monitoring organizations that exist, is that we elect our leaders to work for us. And if that's the case, then we must have an opportunity of tracking or keeping tabs as to how they are working on our behalf. And so They Work For You in the UK has been an inspiration, not just for us, but for many other PMOs across the continent and in the globe. Since 2012, we've grown, and last year we launched our new 5-year strategic plan, And so our work currently is pegged on 3 pillars: inclusion, openness, and accountability. And also we've expanded the scope of action to regional. And I guess that's where we are having a session such as this, where we are sharing our experiences with you colleagues from West Africa. So in terms of our experience, what sort of tools have we used? I'm trying to, yeah, that's much better. So as from the onset, it was very clear to us that for us to be able to achieve and to realize our goals, we needed to come up with tools that would allow us to do more with very little. So with very little budgets, with a very small team, for a very long time, our team has just been about 2 or 3 people in an institution, and yet with a very high demand of the sort of information and knowledge that we were seeking to share with the citizens. It was then very important that we come up with innovative tools that would allow us to meet our objectives. And so we adopted different approaches. One of them is the capacity to have an automated Hansard. And this became and remains one of our very useful tools, because of the fact that it is searchable. It makes it very easy to mine information on performance. It helps us and other institutions and researchers from across the world. We get a lot of interest from researchers, students and consultants seeking to do research on the Kenyan Parliament, and they're able to come to our platforms and get this information. It helps us to be able to track legislation and who contributed to that legislation, including being able to verbatim get the content of what a member of parliament contributed to on that day. And for us, this has been a very useful resource, because in terms of performance tracking, it's a basis upon which we are then able to do an annual scorecard that takes 2 fronts. So there's an annual scorecard that ranks those who perform well and those who don't, but also we use it as a tool that helps us then reward or award those that have made contributions to what we've defined as public interest legislation, issues that they brought to the House that were so pertinent to the needs of the citizens in the preceding year, and that we feel they need to be rewarded. So that's been one of the civic capacity that we have built to strengthen our work. The next one has been around use of informatics. So we've been able to aggregate and visualize parliamentary information, example being the scorecard that I've spoken about, but also extending this to most of the research work that we do so that it's consumable by the citizens. We also do blogging. So again, on topical parliamentary information. So at the end of every week, we're able to generate what was, we call it the Bunge Summary, so Parliamentary Summary of the proceedings of the 2 houses of parliament. And from that, we're able to then define a topic for the week that is then informed by the citizens, and they're able to use that. Again, on social media, those that may have interacted with us on social media at Mzalendo Watch on Twitter and Mzalendo on Facebook, you'll notice that we provide live coverage of parliamentary proceedings. We are able to give you real-time voting patterns. We are able to give you real-time conversations on discussions on the key bills. And we are also able to give you analysis, post-legislative scrutiny or scrutiny during the public participation process that allows people to then engage with legislation in a more meaningful way. And then finally, we have our SMS platform, Bonga na Mzalendo, which is Speak with Mzalendo. It allows an interaction option for citizens on topical parliamentary issues. And this one specifically focuses, like I said earlier, on those that don't have access to either smartphones or in regions with low internet penetration. And the beauty about this SMS platform is that it has allowed us to widen our footprint across the continent. So across the country. So at the last check, For example, we had a footprint in 42 out of the 47 counties in the country. On my right, I guess that's on your left, you then see the Dokeza platform that I've spoken about. That's our bill annotation platform. And what this platform does, just amplifying it a little bit more, it allows us to be able to identify the bills that are in the House, to track that legislation, and you can visit dokeza.com for more information, to submit memoranda. And this one was very important and became such a useful tool, especially during COVID, because like most countries, I would assume that it's the same case in your country, public participation is often, at both national and county levels, it's often a physical activity. You have a town hall or you're in a meeting, but now during the COVID, that was not possible. And so citizens still needed to be able to review legislation, to give their feedback, to generate memoranda. And this gives you a seamless opportunity to go through the legislation, have some expert analysis, and be able to submit your memoranda to Parliament. The other way I touched this on the beginning is providing some what we call the data mining platforms, and I've spoken a little bit on this. So, we provide MPs profiles with biographical data. So we've taken that approach of giving you more information. So if you come to our website, you can tell who is that MP, what are their responsibilities, what positions do they hold, what is their education, what have they contributed. And so this allows you to have real-time information, which party do they belong to, which positions do they hold, and if you click on full experiences, you're then also able to tell like what's their education qualification. On your right, then that's I did speak about, the Hansard, again, the touchable Hansard that, as you can see, then allows you to see real-time conversations as they happen, and it's searchable, meaning you don't have to go the long way of PDF versions. You can actually read and be able to extract information. So what are some of the citizen participation tools that we've used? Again, getting a little bit into more details about them. I've talked about the Bonga na Mzalendo, and how we use this is at any given time, we're interested in knowing what are the issues that our citizens are struggling with, what are the topical issues that are dominating the conversations. So like this year, we are in the middle of elections, so we'd be interested to know, are citizens joining political parties? If they are joining, perhaps do they feel the political parties are inclusive enough? What's their view on the legislation that's in the House? So that is how we use that platform of Bonga, which is, I said, Speak na Mzalendo. And once this information is shared, it's then collated, and we use it in different ways, whether to inform research, whether to inform bills, and whether to inform any political or policy discourse that we are having. The next way, the next one is around the legislative and voting patterns. Again, this is sharing the information, as I have explained on Dokeza, that if you go to the website, you have access to the legislation that is in the House, and it tells you, is it going through the first reading? Is it going through the second reading? Tells you who has sponsored the bill, and tells you what the objectives of the bill is, and also provides you with an opportunity to then annotate and give your feedback and submit a memorandum. And then on your right, on your right, I did mention about the Bunge Live, which is live parliamentary proceedings. And this is what I meant, that through that live coverage, we are even able to tell you what the voting patterns on any given bill, and especially those bills that have very high national interest, what is the voting pattern? And beyond the numbers, we are also able to break that further down and give you the specificities around the members who voted yes. So in this case, we'll be able to give you who are the 37, who are the abstentions. The next area that I spoke about is the informatics. So this is our annual parliamentary scorecard. It's one of our flagship products. We release it every year, to talk with the exception of an election year like this one. So like this year, we will not be releasing our scorecard because we do not want it to be politicized, you know. And so we do this 4 years of the 5-year cycle. And the idea is to rank MPs on how they have performed. And this is an excerpt from the 2020 scorecard, which we then released last year. So the annual scorecard looks at the preceding year. So were we to release a scorecard this year, it would then be looking at 2021. And it lists the performance in the different houses. So, sorry. What are some of the challenges? Because it really isn't a walk in the park, as you can imagine. As you can see, part of it, as explained earlier, a lot of it is collaborative because it's information sharing, but the others that you're really stepping onto areas that can sometimes be sensitive. So sometimes we face resistance to the goals, you know, but this is often limited to the scorecard. The other challenge, and I think this is, if you're conceptualizing a PMO or working on strengthening parliamentary monitoring in Togo, this is one of the areas that you might encounter that, whereas you might have a lot of high interest, you know, from civil society organizations and from the media, sometimes citizens have very little interest in the role of MPs, you know. Often they just want to know, what can you give us? You're not interested in whether you made laws, and the disconnect between the lawmaking role of MPs and the daily, you know, the daily needs of citizens is often lost. So that sometimes makes your work feel very difficult. Other times you don't have the adequate financial support. You know, developing these tools are not cheap. And so you'll have to put in place a robust fundraising mechanism to be able to have the sort of resources, the technical capacity, the technical support that allows you to manage, you know, like for us to manage the website with all the data sets that we hold, manage Dokeza, manage the social media sites, and still be able to do other area of work like research. It requires a lot of resources that you really need to look for. Having said this, a lot of opportunities exist, and I'm really excited to see the growth that parliamentary monitoring is exhibiting in the continent. And I really must thank the Parliamentary Network Africa for this, especially with the Western Circuit, because the Western Circuit, you're really setting the pace very high, and you're showing us what is possible, and you're sharing information, and you're peer learning from each other. And so I'll tell you that opportunities do exist, because, I mean, and opportunities are in plenty, because one, it's a novel area. Yes, in a lot of ways, civil society organizations, whether they are working on budgetary oversight, whether they're working on integrity and leadership or accountability, whether they're just tracking human rights, a lot of organizations do monitor parliamentary work in the different spaces. But when you zero down to creating a niche for yourself around parliamentary monitoring and making that your core function, you then find that you streamline your approaches, you streamline your methodologies, and you form credible and effective working relationships, not just with MPs, but with different stakeholders. You become an effective tool for civil society partners, civil society organizations, an effective tool for media. So every time journalists are seeking information on parliament, including parliamentary journalists, they will come to you and say, you know, maybe we missed this, or could we have the analysis that you did on that? And that is able to enrich your work. Again, if you work with PMOs, whether you're a civil society organizations or as media, you can convert the information that we generate into successful advocacy for reform and constructive parliamentary engagement. So if a PMO that is tracking legislation, for example, and you are working in the accountability sector, and you have interest in a specific legislation, you are then able to use that as a constructive tool for advocacy, and also to engage Parliament. And we've at institutional level had some bit of successes with this when we've joined forces with other institutions to advocate for legislation touching, for example, on Chapter 6 of our Constitution, which speaks on leadership and integrity, when we talked about campaign financing and other areas. And then finally, there's support, networking, and peer-to-peer learning among PMOs. As I said, there are so many approaches that have been taken. And if I look at a country, even as Ghana, for example, I think there are different PMOs that take different formats. So there are multiple institutions there, multiple institutions in Nigeria, for example, that are doing parliamentary monitoring work, but have created very niche spaces for themselves. In addition to that, I think there's a lot of, there are emerging areas, post-COVID, and emerging areas of PMOs to focus on. Partnership also with international PMOs, like Latin America is one of the regions where parliamentary monitoring organizations are very strong. Europe, including Eastern Europe, where you have very strong PMOs. And so there's a lot to learn and to consolidate good practices within the PMO community. So what needs to be done, to improve the work and to support emerging PMOs, especially in countries that are now really just getting to create these frameworks? I think there's the support that is needed, especially from the global partners and institutions that have built more experience to help us streamline, the tools and the standards that we use. So one of the areas, for example, is indices of parliamentary transparency. I've talked about the scorecard that we do, for example. You may find that we're in a minority of PMOs that take that approach to gauging performance. The others that will take a different approach of, for example, legislative tracking. Others might take budget oversight. But if we had this one format that we can then be able to utilize as PMOs across the continent, we would also be able to enhance the discourse on legislative openness and parliamentary monitoring, because we can do sort of peer-to-peer review of parliamentary openness across the continent. So developing the standards and the indices and the open data standards then become very useful. There's also opportunities to engage the informatics community. So a lot of, and this is important because part of the reason that citizens don't engage so much with parliamentary information or any information touching on, legislative issues, policy issues is, of course, this information is bulky. In a lot of times it's technical, it's legal, and sometimes you need to break that down to a language or a level that the citizens not only understand, but can quickly consume. So how we build this sort of community to then be able to quickly share different infographic templates, information tools, and encouraging common tools to share information would be interesting. And then again, talking about international norms and standards for democratic parliaments. So if you look at the practice on legislative openness and the advocacy around open parliaments, the idea is to have similar principles and similar standards that guide parliaments. And therefore you have a threshold against which you can hold a national parliament accountable or a subnational parliament accountable. You can have a list of irreducible minimums that needs to be met for you to define parliament. And for us to be able to generate this sort of knowledge in the continent, we then need to have a lot of peer learning and exchanges with those that have more experience than us from across the region. I think that's it for my presentation. For more information, you can visit us on Twitter, like I said, at Mzalendo Watch. Mzalendo.com is our website. And if I can just quickly take you through it, just for a bit of the information, real-time information. So that's who we are. We just changed it recently. So if I look at our Eye on Parliament, this is how we do it. And you see it as the 3 houses and the county assemblies. And now because of the regional focus, we also have that. So different tools that you will find if you visit our website, in terms of what is relevant to the conversation today, the democracy tools, as we are calling them now. You have the Dokeza, you have the Hansard, and this is updated real time, 2 days after parliamentary proceeding. And you have all the transcriptions on that. So I would want to end it there and thank you for listening and look forward to taking some questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Caroline. Thank you for highlighting and giving us some insight on how to use technology to promote parliamentary openness to some of the tools such as Dokeza, the Bonga Mzalendo. I think these are really quite very enlightening. We thank you very much. Donc maintenant, pour l'équipe qui sont au Togo, on est fini avec la présentation. Donc si vous avez des questions, bien des commentaires, vous pouvez poser ça en levant vos mains. Et je sais que Ben va vous donner le micro pour poser ça. Aussi pour les gens qui sont en ligne, vous pouvez faire ça en levant vos mains aussi, ou bien vous pouvez écrire ça dans le chat. So right now we can ask our questions. If there are any questions or any comments, you can ask that. You can also use the chat box to ask your questions. So as we wait for the questions to come, there's already a question here. I'd want you to answer that, Madam Caroline. So the question is, as a PMO that has been developing these tools to enhance the work of Parliament,
yes,
what do you do when Parliament does not easily buy into the introduction of such tools to enhance transparency and citizenship participation? What do you do when Parliament doesn't easily accept these things?
So a very interesting structure of our institution is that we are independent of Parliament. So I ought to have mentioned that for some parliamentary monitoring organizations, they are housed in Parliament and they work in Parliament. But for us, we are independent. So for us, we've taken the development of tools more from a citizen point of view than Parliament. But what that has resulted to is that a lot of the things that we have been advocating for, we have then seen that Parliament on its own then has adopted, similar standards. So for example, if we were advocating for information on members of Parliament, now they have created, the website. And if it's information, say on parliamentary proceedings, they've been able to now establish the broadcasting services for live coverage of Parliament. So as a PMO, the work that we do is to really catalyze change in the way that Parliament conducts its business. That's one. But also two is to enhance more from the demand side of citizens, of media, of civil society organizations, so that Parliament can respond to this, to these demands. Do we have recourse if, for example, Parliament is not proceeding? Maybe not from the development of the tools themselves, because the tools are ours, but in terms of maybe accessing information, Kenya is one of the countries in the continent with an Access to Information Act. That's one. And then two, the Constitution is also in Article 118, very clear as to how Parliament conducts its business. So they need to be open, they need to be accessible, they need to allow media and interested parties in the proceedings. It's a constitutional provision. So I guess that works as a safeguard for the work that we do. And then maybe perhaps say that we've been fortunate enough that Parliament has moved in tandem with us. But just to clarify that for us, the focus is more on the citizenry side, developing tools that facilitate citizen engagement with Parliament than on Parliament developing the tools themselves.
All right, thank you very much. I don't know if there are any other questions.
Perhaps,
okay, from my side.
If perhaps, I'm not sure if those are questions, you could translate the French charts. You can get a little bit of it, but the first one, I think it was on the screen, but I'm not so sure.
Okay, Sharif. Okay, this is actually a comment. So for the translation, Mr. Translator, if you can increase your volume is kind of down, so the French participants can't really hear what you are saying. So if you can increase your volume, that will help us.
Okay, all right.
Are there any other questions? Ok, Madame Bernadette, est-ce que vous avez une question? Vous avez levé votre main, c'est pourquoi je vous demande ça. Okay, I think she was the one who sent the first and the second comment. So I think it was based on that she raised her hand. So she doesn't have any other question. Yeah. So I guess we can bring this session to a close. Thank you very much for being a part of this. We are very grateful for your presence. We know the time difference, but you have been able to keep up with us. We really appreciate that. Thank you, and we'll engage again. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. Thanks also for the opportunity to share our work with West Africa, and we look forward to more collaborations and engagements.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye-bye. Au revoir tout le monde. On se verra encore une autre fois.
Oh, is that one question or?
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think I see that. J'ai une question. Ça, c'est Madame Bernadette.
Bernadette is a guest. She is unable to ask an audio question, so she may have to type the question because it is a webinar. So maybe Cynthia, you may have to help Bernadette in understanding that she may have to type her question.
Okay, so you can translate. I think I can see citizens and participation of citizens. You can translate the question. Yes. Okay, all right. Hope I'll find them. Okay, just a minute. Okay, I'll go back to sharing my screen. And I'll go back to okay. Okay, so we have a number of platforms that we are currently using to facilitate citizen engagement on parliamentary issues. So the first one is the SMS platform that I said, the Bonga na Mzalendo. So Bonga means speak with Mzalendo. And it really is, it's like I said, it targets those that don't have access to the smartphones and those that may be areas with low internet penetration. So it's a sort of USSD code-based platform where people are, we ask a question on our website and citizens respond to this. And the sort of questions that we ask is informed by the topical issues that are facing the nation. So for example, this one that I had used was in relation to voter registration. So depending on what's happening in the country at any given time. So for example, now we are preparing for our party nomination processes. So we may want to ask questions, are young people registered as members of political parties? And this really just helps us to be able to generate data that then we are able to use to inform our questions. So if we are talking about maybe a legislation that's focusing on youth participation, or we are talking about recently we've had a political party amendment bill, and we are interested in seeing how young people or how citizens are basically participating in those political parties, we may pose such a question, and then that feedback will inform that conversation. Second one is the Dokeza platform. So as explained, the Dokeza platform is a bill annotation platform. We normally upload the bills that are in the House at any given time on our Dokeza platform. And what this adds that is probably different from what is on the website of Parliament is that it allows you to look at the bill. It allows you to annotate, so you can give your comments on the bill. And it also allows you to then be able to submit your memoranda. In addition to that, sometimes depending on the bill, we'll also have like an expert analyst who might be able to come on, get on the website, on the platform, look at a bill and be able to give the expert analysis. So this helps citizens. And why we developed this Dokeza platform was the realization that a lot of, in addition to the physical public participation processes that I mentioned, the other one was that citizens, especially, the work or the active citizens that may be interested in engaging the legislative processes don't necessarily have the time nor the tools to develop very long and to look at bills very intensively. But with such a platform, they can come, look at the bill and give their comments, and very quickly that is collated and generated into a memorandum. So that's what that bill, that platform does. Last year, or in 2020, we also added a legislative tracker, and I'll click on it so that you can see it in real time. The one on your right is our SMS, is our social media. That's our Twitter handle at Mzalendo Watch. And why I included it there is because we use social media to provide, or rather we provide a link to the live coverage of parliamentary proceedings, and we share these proceedings on our social media platform. So if you go on our Facebook page and on our Twitter handle, you are then able to follow the conversation. Again, this is important because as a citizen, you may have a TV in your house and the parliamentary proceedings may be on, and so you can say that they are on, but rarely will you have the time to sit down and really listen and really just follow what is being contributed to in a bill. So what we offer citizens is then that opportunity to synthesize the information for them. So we are the ones who will sit down and analyze that information for them. The other tool I shared is the, okay, I need to get off this, is the Informatics. And I shared this because, as I explained in my earlier slides, one of the tools that most parliamentary monitoring organizations across the globe use is this Informatics or infographics. It's to ease the understanding of the information, it's to simplify the data, it's to package information that citizens can quickly adapt and use easily. So I use this example of a parliamentary scorecard, but the other infographics that we have done on the website, and I'll share that is maybe a summary of a research. So instead of doing a research of publishing a research that's 50 pages, then we summarize it into infographics, and it makes it easier for citizens, for researchers, for media to then be able to get the data at the touch of a button. Maybe I just come here and just show you the Dokeza platform. Seems it's down. Oh my goodness. I need to find out whether it's this is embarrassing. It's rare that it's down. So let me see. It's there. Yeah, so that's a website on real time. The analysis has not been very active, but we analyze the legislation, so that would be the analysis that's done. This is how we use. So like I said, you can comment on a bill, you can create a memoranda, and you can create other documents. For example, if you're doing research, you can pick salient issues that are of interest to you from the bill. This is a summary of the bills. We try and update them as frequently as possible, but clearly we have not updated as much as we would want. But the idea is to make it as current as possible. Then we have a legislative tracker. So again, this is to help you. This is also a different tool. So this is a tool that it's different from Dokeza, but it's hosted within the Dokeza platform. So if you're a citizen or a civil society organization that is working on a specific legislation, for example, if you come here, you can then be able to tell where your specific legislation is, and you can also search for the bill. The same goes for regulations. So if there are regulations that we are following up and they have been posted, you will find them there. So that's one area. I also talked about the infographics. So this is mainly the scorecards. So these have been the different scorecards we've done over time. If you click on any of them, you'll find that most of them are in infographic format. So like I say, just to make sure you can see as way back from 2015, it's just so it's an accountability tool, because we need to know how your member of parliament has performed, but we also summarizing the information in a manner that is very easy to digest without having to read through a whole research document. Yeah, and so basically taking different approaches to different things to facilitate and to facilitate engagement. Let me see if I go back to the, yeah. I don't know that they have answered the questions.
All right, I think that is all. She is very okay now. I've asked her whether she understood everything. She's okay with that. The only thing is she's asking if we could share the presentation with her. So the presentation we shared with every participant. So yes, that is, they should be rest assured that you have the presentation.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, all right.